At 28 years old, I was shot and paralyzed from the chest down. I had two options. I could stop and let the things I cannot control me, or I could move forward and put my energy into things that would improve my life and those around me. I chose to move forward and surround myself with risk takers, innovators, and leaders who've chosen the same path. Join us on the journey. Hello and welcome to Forward with me, Derek Herrera. I've got an amazing guest for you all today, and her name is Victoria Hathaway. She is a young executive and currently the director of operations for MedTechVets, and her journey is pretty incredible, and she definitely overcame adversity in her youth and was able to reframe some of these challenges as positive experiences, in addition to allowing that to drive her to pursue a career helping others through diversity and inclusion as a recruiter, and now as the director of operations as MedTechVets. After spending time in academia, she transitioned to lead MedTechVets, where she currently serves as director of operations and has done amazing work to help veterans find meaning, purpose, and fulfillment through employment in the medical device and life science industry. As a board member with MedTechVets, I'm biased about our impact, but in this conversation we explore and discuss the methods that we use to engage any veterans who are searching for their next mission. So if you care to learn more about our work, hope you listen to this podcast or visit our website, www.medtechvets.org, medtechvets.org. The program is free for any transitioning active duty service members or honorably discharged veterans. There's a very simple application that they can fill out on our site. And we're also recruiting corporate sponsors and mentors who are willing to donate time, talent, and treasure to support our efforts. And so if you know anyone who's interested, please have them reach out to me directly. Lastly, I've had some great feedback thus far on the podcast and truly appreciate the support. I misspoke previously because our podcast is not yet live on Apple Podcasts, so there's no way to rate it through Spotify. And so if you're listening on Spotify, to expand our reach, I'd kindly ask that you share it with any of your friends, family, or colleagues who may be interested and benefit from this information. And when we do launch on Apple Podcasts, which will be very shortly, most likely this week, please consider leaving us a review, hopefully 5 stars, and any comments so that others can help explore and learn about this podcast who may not already be part of our tribe and our network. Thanks again for listening, and hope you enjoy this episode of Forward with Victoria Hathaway, and have a phenomenal week. Victoria, it's a pleasure to have you here today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Derek. I'm really excited to be here and to be a part of the great conversations you've been having.
That pleasure's all mine. So to get started, we know a little bit about what you've been doing professionally, but would love to know kind of how you got into that role. Like, how did you end up doing diversity recruiting and working in academia, and what kind of fueled that passion, and what was it like when you were, growing up that led you down that path?
Mm-hmm. I mean, diversity recruitment has, been a growing field for, in my mind, really the past few years. Growing up for me as, what is considered underrepresented in terms of being a first generation college student, as well as from a low income background, I was really able to see a lot of the barriers that were in place at an early age. I would kind of need to overcome in some way to be able to, be successful not only in school, but also professionally. So it was really early on that I saw that I'd have to, work in different ways myself to be able to overcome some of those perceived barriers. And again, depending on folks and their backgrounds and identities, it can be certainly a lot more difficult. So again, it was really my personal background and the difficulties I saw growing up that I realized it would be important to be in a decision-making role on the other side of the table, whether that was in colleges and diversity recruitment, and now in this, hybrid role where I am working with recruiters and companies, and also veterans themselves. So had I not had those experiences growing up, I probably wouldn't pursue the fields that I have thus far.
Yeah, that's awesome. And really interested to hear your experience too, because what I've found in my personal experience, as I was leaving the military, uh, the attainability of some of these, seemingly impossible colleges or jobs or roles or corporate environments, a lot of times I feel like can be influenced by your network and your background and how you're brought up. And so, um, the analogy I give, and I've been on the other side now, and when I was going out and applying to business school, because I wanted to go to business school as I was leaving the military, I was shocked that like I was able to be a competitive applicant for some of those top tier institutions. And one of the things that really helped me gain confidence to do that was as soon as I had a friend who who I knew in those positions and in those roles, it became relatable, right? I'm like, oh man, if Dan's at Harvard, like I know Dan, like he's not that much different than me, right? I can do that. I think that might be achievable, right? Like let's try, right? And that's what kind of inspired me to pursue that. Um, Same thing with the program I went through at UCLA, which was the executive MBA program. I was 28 years old when I entered. And so I didn't even consider that program initially because I was like, am I really an executive? The average age is 37. Like, will I fit in? Will I be competitive? How will I do that? So really interested to hear your thoughts about any of the programs or things that worked to help you with your personal background, uh, pursue a college education and then to pursue the passion that you had to try to give back on the other side too. And I saw in the notes that even people and career counselors in high school were telling you that they'll never go to college, right? And so really want to hear how you're able to overcome that and what that experience was like.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I think from, my own experience, not having someone, at least in my own family, to be able to tell me, or to guide the way certainly made, that path a little more difficult. And like you shared with, social connections and seeing peers around you to be able to do it, is really inspiring. I mean, for me, again, I lived in 6 states growing up and, dealt with, yeah, personal difficulties and, and out of foster care. I mean, at one point I really didn't think, much of my education and, ability to be able to overcome that besides perhaps, following down a similar path to my parents. So with that said, it really was for me the lack of seeing those things that pushed me to be able to, again, to kind of carve a new path. I went to two different high schools and, saw some folks around me that were making it happen, but it really was hearing no and, being told that, these degrees maybe weren't possible, that kind of kept me moving forward throughout. I really didn't know at all. That there were programs and, opportunities and scholarships until I started doing research at a public library to be able to see that these resources are out there. So it's been really great to be on the other side of that professionally, to be a part of those programs, to be, again, one of the decision makers as well, to be able to share to be able to share information that these things do exist. There are programs and resources and employee resource groups. I mean, there are just more and more, from what I've seen, growing resources and opportunities for folks of all backgrounds to be able to create their own way. So it really does take digging, but to me that's been great, as these resources are out there. And like you said, there are folks that either look like us or come from similar backgrounds in these roles, but it does take a bit more research and dedication to, finding what those are and pursuing them. So that was really my route, was research.
Yeah, I love it. I love it because, like even though you were unaware of those programs, right? Like the single decision, it sounds like you're saying you made was as soon as someone told you no or that something was unattainable, you didn't listen, right? And you turned that into motivation to say, why not? Like, why not me, right? And then we're successful in developing a plan to figure out how to get into college and how to get accepted to some of the the amazing universities that you did. And so that's really impressive. And I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic. I have to believe that, um, then even though you're very young, right? Like, I think people hopefully are more aware and access to information is more available today for people that are looking for these sorts of resources and programs. And it's out there if people are looking, right? If they search online or different things, they may not have to go to the public library and do it the way that you did. And so it's more accessible. Plus, I think probably, I don't know if you would agree, but I would say that with a renewed focus on this and in these types of programs, people are out there trying to push and advertise this message, just like for us, what we're doing today, talking about this, hopefully with our role with MedTechVets, if there's any veterans listening, right, they'll become more aware of this opportunity. Or if people listening to this uh, know any veterans that are maybe interested in new careers or new roles, they can learn more and find out about this. And so I think there's been a little bit of a shift from what I've seen to be more proactive in getting that message out and using technology to scale and to make that information available. So I don't know if would you agree with that based on your experience in colleges from when you're on the other side?
Yeah, absolutely. And an example that I'm thinking, as things have really progressed, I grew up with, my father, who is, a military veteran himself who served in the Navy and has struggled with PTSD ever since. And he's held a number of blue collar roles and has been working tremendously hard, but again, with some obstacles in his way along the way. And I've seen him, you know, sort of go through some different resources with, the VA and working through personal experiences and seeing my own father be able to, take advantage of some of those resources that are there, is a great example of that. Granted, he didn't take advantage of the GI Bill and, doesn't necessarily have a higher education to do so. And that still prevents him from doing some roles out there. It hasn't stopped him fully. So seeing that for somebody in their late 50s is certainly still, inspiring to see him keep going at it. And I certainly hope it, whether folks are veterans themselves or again looking for programs that may be tailored to them, they are out there, and that you just need to keep pushing and asking the right folks. And certainly with our work at MedTechVets, we are that light for people and do our best to advertise, of course. But there are more and more resources and programs again and centers and institutions. I just think again it really does take that personal motivation to find it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. And it's amazing to hear about your father, right? Who, you know, after having dealt with challenges like post-traumatic stress and those things, is now able to go back in his later life, right, and go and take advantage of resources to help that. So it's admirable, right, of people to do that, and worth noting. So, um, so when you got your college admissions letter, like, how did that feel for you? Like, after having gone through this, being told, no, 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 and then finally achieving success, and getting there, like, what what did that feel like as you were beginning to move forward and kind of break through those barriers that were presented to you?
Well, I'm definitely not the most emotional or emoting person out there, but I can say when I first received those letters come in, and some of them were still paper back then, I do recall being just overwhelmed with emotion, and then sort of the serious nature sets back in on me. And well, okay, how can I, make this possible? Because it's one thing to hear a yes, but it's another thing to think, okay, well, what is the facts around this, and how do I actually go? And eat, and do I need a car, and how does, residential life work, and there's all these other steps. So uh, it was great to see that this was an option for me. I just wanted to be able also to see, okay, now how is this feasible that I can go? It's one thing to hear a yes, and then it takes another step to make it happen. So I was overjoyed, and then kind of calculative to see, okay, how do these scholarships work, and how does this number match up, and what is life actually going to be like for me, at these institutions. So it was a twofold.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. And I think it's pretty mature answer, right? Even for 17 or 18-year-old, however old you were when that happened, right? Because um, you have that joy and achieving something, right? But then it opens up this new world of like detailed planning. But then also one thing that was really interesting, and I noted when we first met and we're interviewing for the role with MedTechVets, was it was pretty apparent that you had uh, a growth mindset, right? And you weren't settling, right? And so what I saw in your history, right, was you got into college, transferred to another college, got a master's degree, continued to move forward and progress, and continue to achieve, right? And having that, I think, um, made it very clear that you would be an effective team member, especially coming into a new environment in the nonprofit area, and taking on a tremendous undertaking of trying to build the organization that we are. So, um, so yeah, so you went to you transferred from one college to another, right? So you had gotten and started and then transferred to UCLA.
So I started out at Ithaca College. So I was there a year and a half, and then I decided to study abroad. And then while I was abroad, I was wrapping up my transfer applications, and then had received the news from Cornell University with a very generous scholarship. And that's where I completed my undergraduate degree, focused, and knew I really wanted to pursue a higher education to keep learning and growing. And it was there again that I received an amazing fellowship that allowed me to do my master's right after I completed my undergraduate degree.
And that one was at UCLA, right?
Yes.
All right. Just got to
Go
plug Bruins.
Bruins.
So yeah, that's good. Cornell, they're all right, right? Like they're okay. It's amazing school. Yeah, and yeah, phenomenal education, obviously, but you didn't stop there, right? You continued to move forward and put that to work on the other side. And so, at what point did you determine that was your passion moving forward, and to try to pursue a career in that industry with recruiting and career advising and diversity recruitment?
So earlier you talked about the importance of your social network, and how, had not seen fellow folks go to certain institutions, you may not have seen yourself there. It was similar for me growing up, where I had seen a lot of teachers and educators, and not too many folks that were maybe lawyers or doctors around me. So I always knew education was the way forward for me in some kind of capacity, that was really important to inspire the next generation, but also to be able to, influence folks that come after me. So although my background was always sort of in that realm, it wasn't until I was in college that I had switched from that teaching degree mindset to the more of, okay, if I'm an administrator, if I can actually make decisions and or help propel new initiatives, that's really what's going to make the difference. And it wasn't until, again, that I was actually in school that I was able to see that that's really the way, for me, that I saw, to move forward. So I remember, changing my major that wasn't an emphasis on teaching history to something more broad, that I knew that no matter what I did, it's about the experiences that I'm having that's going to help me get into those roles later on, no matter what my actual major was. Um, so that's a little bit about how I thought about, you know, making that transition. And again, I really do think that we are in many ways what we are exposed to. So had I not been at those institutions, or had seen folks in leadership roles really be able to make the programs that gave me the scholarships I needed to have tremendous experiences that I wouldn't have had otherwise, then I wouldn't be in any of the roles that I've ever had, or I wouldn't be, able to do so. So with that said, I've always wanted to pay that back, and not just pay that back as if something, it's not something I need to do. It's something that I've always wanted to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and I don't know. There's probably a million quotes about that, right? But if what you can do for your profession or your choice of work is, just truly bringing you joy, right? Then it's makes work easy, right? Even when it's hard. So that's awesome. And so what did you like, or what? I mean, we talked about it from the high level, but like, what were some of the better days or things that you really enjoyed about advising and recruiting at the universities that you were at before you joined MedTechVets?
Well, a lot of it is really still similar. So, working one on one with folks has always been really important. And, whether that's advising for the first time folks that are going to school, or whether that's, reading over an admissions essay and giving advice and feedback, or whether that's looking at a resume in somebody's career that's really going to make it or break it in the civilian world. I find those all interrelated and similar, and I think that it's these experiences when you are able to work one on one that I really cherish and value. So again, it looks different, of course, working with a high school population or a college age population, and even folks that have been in industry for 15 or so years. But at the end of the day, this is, yeah, to me, it's all interrelated. And no matter, what our educational background is or experiences professionally and beyond, I think there are always so many ways that we can, look at something with fresh eyes. And I'm able to give back just as much as folks are teaching me something as well, which is really great because I'm always learning too.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, especially the more diverse group of people you can help, right? The more different their backgrounds are. It seems like the more breadth of experience and things you can learn, right? And I think seeing the fulfillment, I'd never understood it quite so much until I started working as a member of the board with MedTechVets. But being able to see people and build those relationships with them uh, before they're placed in new careers or new environments, leaving the military or doing these sorts of things, and then watching them transform, right? Their lives and their beings transform from a state of anxiety and apprehension and nervousness of what am I going to do? How can I find something I'm passionate about? Um, how can I align all my interests? All of these things to find a new career. Seeing them go through the process and then succeeding is 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 pretty impactful and pretty rewarding and truly amazing. Um, so now that I've seen that, right, like in a past life, uh, it sounds like an awesome job to do, and I can see why you did it. Obviously, that's not the track I'm on now, but it's been awesome to see and try to help out with MedTechVets and see those people find placement. And I don't think there's much of a difference, right? It seems very similar to academia and industry, um, just a different end goal, right?
Absolutely. And in so many ways, I see you do that too, even to young entrepreneurs and for folks that come through the program in the academy, right? Who are also following your journey and ours and the staff, right? And they're drawn to the program for a reason. So I think, again, it's that the myriad of backgrounds that you represent and that I represent and the staff that really does, contribute to the folks that we get and are able to see grow and change and are already in a few different roles even after graduating from our program.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been amazing, and it's been a really rewarding experience as well, and it's been a true pleasure. So the to take a step back, so the way that I got involved with this program, MedTech Vets, formerly it was called MVP Vets, and it was a nonprofit started by a guy named Mike Minogue, who's the CEO of a company called Abiomed. He's a West Point graduate and a former Army Ranger, and very successful CEO of a medical technology med device company um, that makes, I think, the smallest heart pump, miniature implantable heart pump in the world, which is awesome. And as I was leaving UCLA and deciding to start my own company, I didn't have that network of people, but I still knew that this is what I wanted to do. And so I was fortunate to meet him at a conference, and someone introduced me to him, and he was so generous with his time and mentorship and helped guide me to be successful with introductions and knowledge and information and advice that it helped me to succeed and take the company that I started at the time, which was Spinal Singularity, and now Eurodev Medical, to the next level, and to help build the vision, make that vision a reality that we had set out to pursue. And so when he asked me if I would get involved and help mentor other veterans, it was a no-brainer, right? And so I joined the board of MedTechVets, and then recently took over as the chairman of the board um, a year or two, maybe 2 years ago, before we rebranded. It became MedTechVets. And what we do is pretty simple, but we've shifted a little bit in what we've offered in the past, where in the past we had a massive online community available for any veterans and employers to log in and get involved. But what we've shifted our efforts to is to provide a much more focused and high touch approach to mentorship for any veterans that are looking to find employment in the medtech or life science industry. And so we run these cohorts we call academies, which have a small number of people in them, anywhere between typically 8 to 10 fellows. They go through a virtual 6-week long program where we personally are advising them, mentoring them, teaching them skills, both hard skills but soft skills, to help make them more employable in industry, and then introducing them to the network of people on the back end who can actually hire them, right, with these major corporations, these major companies. And so it's been amazing. But to your point about the network and the passion, right, this is what we do. And so for anybody listening, if you know veterans that may be interested, it's a very simple application. You can sign up on our website, medtechvets.org. And when you sign up, this is a small nonprofit, so you get Victoria and me and Amy, right? And we're personally there helping you. We're not pawning you off to anybody. And we work with every veteran that comes through and applies for this fellows program, the academy program. So so it's been awesome, and it's been a lot of fun to watch too, because Victoria is now building the team, but for a long time she was single-handedly running the entire nonprofit, running the operations, mentoring veterans, engaging with corporate partners. It was amazing. But I guess to wrap it out, or to kind of highlight the point I started on, went on a little rant there. Sorry. The point I was trying to make was about the value and the impact of relatability within your network. And I think one of the biggest skills we teach people, whether it's in medtech or not, is just how to accomplish that. Because as a veteran, you're told, you're taught not to network, right? You're taught to just talk with people in your chain of command, right? And not to maintain these networks. And so it becomes detrimental when you actually have to go out into the real world and find out that that's how jobs are sourced and filled, is through networks, not just random applications online in, getting cut off by the applicant tracking systems and things like that. So anyway, long rant, but what has been the most exciting or most rewarding part of transitioning and supporting veterans, and what were the things that drew you to pursue that?
Well, two parts, I think, and thank you for touching on the community aspect of what we do, whether that's the mentors that we pair folks with, their own mini cohorts that they work together with, as well as all these company contacts. And even throughout the pandemic, to be able to still see that community here and together, that we do this all virtually, has really been amazing and tremendous to see this continue in such a way, working with folks all across the United States. For me, again, what's really propelling my need to be able to continue to work with these folks in particular is really the value add to not only medtech industry, but really the civilian world, as a whole. And when we, are pairing folks with mentors, and when, I'm working one-on-one and seeing the value that folks have, I think the most rewarding piece is seeing the confidence build as we believe in them and mentors. And, when we have our big networking events, to be able to see, again, that confidence build up and that they feel valued and excited about pursuing careers outside of the military. So I think that's absolutely the most rewarding piece. And you and I have seen, personal stories come through about confidence building and, more skills around interviewing in particular. And that's great to see, those harder skills come to life. But it's really, the personal confidence that I think is number one, because these folks won't be as resilient or motivated unless they believe in themselves. And if we're able to just help convince them or introduce them to somebody else who also believes in them, to me, that's absolutely the most rewarding piece. And if I didn't have, personally folks that told me no, that helped motivate me, but also some that said, yes, you can, then I wouldn't be able to do, what I've done and to stay as strongly motivated and focused on my path too.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's been amazing to see the individual growth. And then I think the other part of that too, which is pretty compelling as well, and what makes it a relatively easy sell in many aspects is, once they kind of get over the fact that it's achievable, is the fulfillment of a career in the industry. And so I went through this process and kind of had different opportunities, right, of banking, consulting, other types of corporate environments. But the reason I ended up in this industry was because of the impact that it holds on people's lives, right? And so I think especially now people are aware of how important innovation is, how important clinical care and medical technology can be. With recent events, that it makes it very easy. And the reason why I think it's impactful for veterans is because coming from the military, you're working in teams to accomplish missions that have a very clear purpose and intent, right? And in a lot of corporate environments, they may not be as clear of a line with the impact that you have. In medical devices, especially medical technology as well, it's very clear, right? I'm making something going into a patient's body potentially, and this may sustain their life or it may improve their life. That's the goal, right? And then obviously there's the financial incentive and the profitability and the sustainability of corporations that drive that. But at the end of the day, when you join a team, if you're not passionate or motivated about the outcome or bought into the mission that you're pursuing, it's unlikely that you'll be successful over the long run, right? Unless you have other reasons or other motivations to do so. And so I think based on the numbers we've seen, veterans in medtech is generally underrepresented. And I don't know why it is. There's probably, systemic issues like just not very traditional skills transfers or experience or whatever else. But what we do at our program is help people overcome that and communicate that in a way that they can understand and explain to people how they're going to be an asset in whatever roles they're pursuing. So it's been really awesome to see that and to see them have that fulfillment, right, with the purpose that they have for why they're working where they work.
Absolutely. And you're touching too on, some of the most personal stories. And again, I think that's what your podcast also touches on, right? Is not only someone's background, but, those values and where they come from. And for me, I really think of someone that we worked with who was a former patient himself, who really wanted to work with a company with a similar device that helped him not only, heal, but even save his life. So I think it's really stories like that and shifting the focus on, this is a really big industry and I actually do have a relation to it, right? Like even for me, I, had no experience within medical technology realm, but that doesn't mean that I didn't support folks transitioning into new experiences for the first time and, to lead and to make decisions. So it really is stories like that, right? That have a personal tie-in. That's like, wait, no, I may not have sold a device, but, I've sold ideas or, I've sold plans, right? To teams to make things happen. So it really is that transferable piece that I think as we work with folks throughout those 6 weeks, we are able to dig in a little bit to say, what you've done is transferable, and this is what that looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. It's awesome. And the patient story. Yeah. I love that story every time we talk about it, because it's really impactful, and it just shows the closing of the loop, right, for people that have been impacted by those devices, and pretty awesome. And it reminded me of a time when I went to visit Edwards Life Sciences, which is a local Orange County company that makes heart valves and is a corporate partner for MedTechVets and has sponsored some of our work in the past. Um, they have a very good setup, and I'm sure a lot of other medical device manufacturing facilities have this as well. But they have a setup where they have the clean room, but they have glass walls, so you can actually walk through and see people on the line manufacturing these heart valves that are going to be going into patients at some point in the future, and save their lives, right? And then at the end, they have patient stories and testimonials and things. And so, one of the people we were talking to was saying that it's not infrequent that someone that's coming through is a recipient of that heart valve, and has come over to see how it's made and to thank the company and thank the people that work there. Um, so truly impactful, and really makes it easy to understand why we do what we do with MedTechVets. So, quick transition to one of the things I wanted to discuss. We talked a little bit about veterans being an underrepresented minority in the medtech industry, and wanted to get your thoughts and just kind of understand some of the things we've seen, and what the value is above and beyond for veterans going into the workforce, specifically for any of our corporate partners or potential corporate partners that may be listening, and mainly because we have this, our organization sits in between the veterans, right, themselves, and corporate partners, right? And so all of our services are offered free for veterans, and we have corporate partners that for access and support and services that we offer, provide sponsorship to us as a nonprofit organization. And so a lot of things that can be valuable and impactful for these big organizations, for diversity initiatives and different things within the HR umbrella. Love to hear your thoughts about what we see, and kind of the value that veterans can bring, because although veterans are not typically considered a minority, there's a very diverse group of people with unique skill sets that come out of the military and enter these roles.
Absolutely. And for those companies and, the specific recruiting teams that are looking for folks from diverse backgrounds, it's been great to see that veterans, are a part of this conversation and are being looked at. We hear traditionally that the military, of course, brings the strong sense of leadership and teamwork and work ethic, as well as doing it for a purpose. And all of those things are true and absolutely make them special and unique. And I think at the other end, we also need to have the conversation that, military veterans and transitioning service members are also, individuals that are going to contribute to this company at a often a higher level, or I think the same as sometimes, right, a civilian member. As much as we talk about what makes folks different, I think there also needs to be the conversation of, also sometimes similarness, right? And it's also special, I think, to be able to group folks simply as to what they can contribute to an organization. So I absolutely think that there are, a number of outstanding qualities that make folks unique throughout the hiring process. It simply is, another maybe tick on the box for some folks to say, and I bring also all of this to the table, right? In terms of international team building and things that some civilians, will never even accomplish within their lifetime. So I think this is a twofold conversation, and that may, take some recruiting managers back sometimes, like, oh wow, like I'm interviewing someone who probably has more experience than me, right? So that's kind of a hard question to ask someone sometimes, like, oh, okay, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where our candidate is probably thinking, as a veteran, well, I see myself doing your role because I did something similar, in the past. I just maybe can't say it like that. So that's kind of interesting to me, right? But
Yeah.
again, for companies, it really has been, I think moving in a positive direction to see that, there is all this special outreach toward veterans themselves. And I think that that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of the barriers that may have existed are being broken down as well. Um, and so it's different, right? It's a challenge, and to kind of empathize or understand the position of corporate HR recruiters. A lot of times, veterans may not check the boxes right or fit within the mold, um, but at the same time, that's kind of the point of the diversity initiative. I think, right, is like, how can I bring people that don't fit the box in, and maybe they need a little more training or mentorship or something like that, but with that, they'll bring a lot of unconventional and intangible skills, which may have a very good application uh, for the company moving forward. And so, not everybody's thinking this, and I think hopefully we can continue to educate people and break down barriers. But um, the ones that I've seen do it better, right, like Abiomed, um, you know, when I talk with Mike and learn about what he's screening for, uh, you know, they're not looking just for the box, right, within the box of must have 10 years experience in R&D, must have 10 years experience in this and that, and all these sorts of things, or 5 years of sales experience in medical devices and all those sorts of things, right? What they're looking for is a lot of the intangible traits and qualities that he knows will make people successful within teams, successful within organizations, and uh, and with a little bit of training and mentorship, um, will be providing massive returns, outsized returns, and impact for the organization than someone who may not have had those experiences. And so, some of those traits that he's looking for, in addition to the intangibles, the right mindset, the right attitude, uh, a desire for knowledge and growth, a hunger for learning, all of those things, critical thinking, problem solving, all of it, right? And that's what has been interesting to see from my personal perspective is, as a Marine Raider and a special operations community, a lot of people ask about our selection process, and they're like, oh, it looks really tough. It looks very physically challenging. And we're like, yes, it is. But that's the tip of the iceberg, right? That physical challenge is designed to peel away exteriors and create stress to enable someone to analyze your psychological and your emotional states and your well-being and see what you're made of, right? And what your motivations are. And then that's the screening, right? It's does this person how does this person react under pressure, right? How do they quit when things get tough? Do they form and build teams, or are they not good teammates, right? Are they not able to operate in those environments? And so, um, all of those things we find pretty commonly in veterans, right? And it may not be common in people who don't have that experience. So it's been really interesting to see, and I think more and more people are becoming more aware. They're willing to potentially make exceptions in some of those hiring roles. Not all of them, but for certain ones, they can do it. And that's kind of the process we go through, which is when we evaluate and work with these fellows in this academy program, uh, we find ways to enable them to communicate directly with those HR managers and ensure that they just don't get screened out by applicant tracking systems, right? Where they're not saying the right buzzwords and the resume never gets seen. I don't know how many veterans I talk to that are transitioning and say, I've submitted my resume to over 200 companies online and haven't gotten a single call back, right? And we're like, dude, you're doing it all wrong, right? Like, you have to talk to people. Like, the software is screening you out because your resume doesn't have the right words and all this stuff. And we go into that in depth, um, but yeah, anyways, it's been pretty impactful to see the change that's occurring within the industry. And and I would implore that, for any HR leaders or people in those roles listening, um, if you have questions about these sorts of things or anything specifically with veterans related issues, you can reach out to us and we'll be happy to try to provide any insight to these things. But if not, would just suggest considering having open mind about some of these things, and determine whether or not having a hard and fast requirement for specific industry experience is actually required, or if you could get by without it. So, yeah.
And I'm so glad you brought up those specific, pathways too within companies like Abiomed, who have specifically created channels for veterans to be able to join and to be exposed throughout a rotation to really have an understanding of the industry as they move through different roles within the organization. And for companies that we work with, sometimes they have those specific programs and requirements, and it's great to see when they're a little bit lenient on that, so we are able to push some folks through that way. And I'd also say for companies that don't yet have one of those specific programs, whether they're looking for officers or folks that were prior enlisted, really creating those channels is so important, because it really is a space where we need to see more of those programs. So thank you for highlighting those that exist within Abiomed, and I implore other companies to be able to create those channels and pathways for folks to join and make it more seamless.
For sure. Awesome. Well, I think it's a good point to wrap. I'll just have one last sentiment, and in the hopes of outreach for anybody listening. Veterans, if you've ever thought about it, a career in the industry, fill out the application online at medtechvets.org. Or if you are in industry and want to help provide meaningful impact for veterans, we have a few ways you can get involved. One is by mentorship. We need people in industry to help mentor some of our fellows and veterans. So you can sign up online to do that as well. It's on our website, medtechvets.org. And then if you're a company as well and interested in providing any sponsorship or gaining access to some of the additional services and offerings that we provide, you can reach out to us through the website as well. But again, it's very simple. Very small nonprofit, a 501c3 nonprofit organization called MedTechVets, and we help veterans find meaningful careers and purpose in the medtech and life science industry. So, Victoria, appreciate your time. It's been awesome chatting with you. Thank you so much for all that you do for the organization and all of our fellows on a day-to-day basis. We wouldn't be successful in our mission without you. And truly appreciate your time here today and sharing more about your personal background and also things that you're doing professionally now. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Derek, for your leadership with MedTechVets, as well as the inspiration that you provide as an entrepreneur. So thank you.
Too kind. Awesome. Well, this has been an episode of Forward with Derek Herrera. My guest, Victoria Hathaway, Director of Operations at MedTechVets, and hope you all have a great week. Thanks.